back down at the court. I'm not talking about counter lawfare today, however. We've got to talk about this guy, Max Yearick. That's the second Max we've dealt with in a little while. I haven't met that many people named Max, but this guy's an interesting character. I'm not down at the court for anything to do with the Max Yearick issue. This was a counter lawfare mission. Had to deliver some papers to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Right there, 40, oh, is that 40? Yeah, that's the one. Anyway, I don't know if people know about this. This is also unrelated to the Trump assassination attempt and Max Yearick, but this thing is called the Triumph of the Human Spirit. I wonder how many people really know about this. This sculpture is dedicated to all of the unknown and unnamed enslaved Africans brought to this country, including the 427 Africans excavated near this site, which is now the rediscovered New York City African burial ground. I'm constantly surprised by how few people, black, white, or otherwise, know about this African burial ground. There's a whole sigil over there that we've looked at before. I don't want to get too caught up in this right now because it's not what we are here to talk about. A lot of people have been asking about this guy, Max Yearick, Maxwell on Twitter. He came up on Saturday. I first saw the name when Roger Stone had tweeted it. And I said, well, that's interesting because Roger Stone definitely has good sources. I saw some people, questioning Laura, like, ooh, how did Laura get this right away and whatever. You got to understand, Laura, if you hang out with her, her phone is binging and tweeting and just going off nonstop. People all over the place are sending stuff to her constantly. So I can only imagine that Roger Stone has a kind of a similar thing going on, and lots of people send all kinds of material. But for some reason, when I saw the picture that Roger Stone had tweeted, it immediately struck me as looking very much like the picture of the dead guy. I used it to create the thumbnail today. People can see we've got in the background the picture of the dead individual from the roof of American Glass Research, where I guess a Secret Service sniper took the dude out. Is a very distinctive set of calcium deposits, I guess those are, on the guy's ear. I guess my video inset is covering that now. But the point is, he's got a very distinctive shape to his ear. And even though there's still a lot about this that we don't know, I'm going to go back to this analogy of, if you have a colleague or a friend or a girlfriend or somebody in your family, if you've ever had somebody in your family who's an alcoholic or a coworker who's an alcoholic or a drug addict, there's certain type of people who you may come to understand are just frequently lying to you, but for whatever reason you have kind of an ongoing interaction with them, maybe. The best analogy I can think of is a cheating spouse, lover, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, where you just come to know that the person is lying and you don't need all the details, you don't need the conclusion to know that the first thing that they're telling you just doesn't hang together or sound true. And then you're getting all this contradictory evidence, and you're also being reminded of the tactics that this person or group use to lie to you. So what am I talking about? Well, we first heard that this dude, Matthew Crooks, that he was the shooter. And I commented on this last night in the show with I Am John Cullen. If you're not following John on Twitter, do that. He's going wild today, and we had a great episode last night. People can still see that sponsor exclusive content by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com. Whoops. Yes, absolutely follow Charles. He's not with me today, but you can also support the show on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth.
has conduct, bias, discrimination against people of color.
This gives people an idea of what's going on in Collect Pond Park when Trump isn't on trial. People could discover this woman. There's just people texting. It's pretty sparsely. I guess they drained this when people were here. I don't know. This used to be a pond, like a natural occurring thing. And the history of it is insane, like putting dead bodies in the pond and all kinds of weird stuff where it became toxic and they had to. Anyway, that's ancient and has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But the point is, one of the common tactics used whenever we have these kind of mass hysteria events, a school shooting, a presidential assassination attempt, whatever it is, where there's a person of interest, there's a series of things that it appears to me, whether it's law enforcement or the media, I think most people have a pretty clear understanding that there is a perhaps unhelpful from the standpoint of people looking for truth, a perhaps unhelpful relationship between law enforcement and the media, or just the government overall and the media. I mean, we saw how the cops controlled this park. People who are new to Crowdsource the Truth, I definitely encourage you to go on to odyssey.com/outcrowdsource the truth. Even if you subscribe for free, it's still the largest repository on the internet of legacy Crowdsource the Truth content. Right there is the deli that Ben Wittes ran into when I started asking him about where all the nonprofit money for the Lawfare Institute was going and why large amounts of it were being sent to his home address when the thing was registered to a P.O. box. All of that is a disaster. But the lawfare community is experiencing disaster after disaster after disaster. I allege they're affiliated with the group that planned this assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I have not heard that many people saying that you have to be a conspiracy theorist to presume that there was something about this assassination that's not quite right. Half of everybody is saying Donald Trump set it up, which I find ridiculous and haven't seen any evidence in support of that other than baseless claims from people who are guessing. What is going on here? This is like a homeless place, I think. I'm not sure what that is. But I think most people seem to agree that it's just absolutely bizarre. That woman's having a Japanese lunch on the street. It's just absolutely bizarre that anybody could access the roof of that low-lying American Glass Research building, which oddly the New York Post will not mention. Again, so that's the first piece of evidence that they're lying to us is that we have this picture of this kid who looks like he's like 12 or 14. I guess it's taken from his high school yearbook, but you're trying to tell me that we don't have any pictures of this guy at all since he was 14? That strikes me as odd. Most people aren't like that. But then the other thing is, we started getting these other pictures of another guy with long hair. The 12-year-old kid, those crazy wheels on this thing. The 12-year-old kid, it just literally looks like a kid. And I mean, I guess, I don't know why they do that, but think of how often we've seen that where they show, I mean, in the case of Trayvon Martin, we get it. They wanted to make him appear young and innocent. But why do they want this guy to appear young and innocent? You would think the mainstream media, it seems like they wanted Trump to get shot. I mean, we've had a bunch of people coming out, you know, expressing their disappointment that the guy missed. Jack Black, all these. Who says that? Even people that you hate, you know? Yeah, I mean, I've said there's people who have died that I feel like the earth is a better place without them, but I don't say that when they've, I mean, it's not, those are people who have done things directly against me. Stephen Biss, I'm thinking of right now. That's a guy who dedicated the last 7 years of his life. He spent a considerable amount of energy trying to destroy my business, trying to destroy my reputation, lying about me in court. Of course I hate that guy and want him to stop. And if I can't get him to stop, if some outside natural cause causes him to stop, it's fine with me. It's just particularly callous in the case of Trump. Particularly, I mean, he wasn't doing anything directly to Jack Black. I mean, arguably, he was making the country better, even if you don't like him. There's a lot of people who have come to that realization. But let's just get back to what I'm talking about. We put up this picture of the 12-year-old, and it's like, okay. Then there's this other picture of somebody older who kind of looks like him, kind of looks like the dead guy on the roof. He's got longer hair, so I guess that satisfies the discrepancy between the 12-year-old having short hair and the dead guy having long hair. But it just still doesn't look like him at all. And also it's come out that the guy with the long hair, remember there was that video in his car where he was like, oh, I'm Matthew Crooks, but you've got the wrong guy. And people were like, what the hell is he talking about? Well, it turns out that's not Matthew Crooks. That's just some guy. That is a terrible guy who had a Twitter account called Jew Gazing. And he's obviously one of these, ignorant people who just thinks every Jewish person adheres to a particular stereotype, and therefore, if you look like you're Jewish, you must be a Zionist, and we need to poke you in the eye with a stick. And the police won't do anything because you shouldn't be here, even though it's 2 blocks from your apartment and it's a public place and these people have no permit for assembly and are being violent. That's what's going on there. So this is a common tactic with the different pictures of the guy. They want to obfuscate what he looks like initially to confuse everyone, and then we can sort of land on who is it going to be. Or even come out later and say, oh, the initial picture was wrong, or new pictures have come out, and he can look a little different or whatever. But the point is, we saw the dead guy on the roof had a very distinctively shaped ear, and I haven't seen any other photos of either of these guys' ears. The other thing that's interesting is I attempted to call Max Yearick this morning, and his phone is still operating. It was not filled. You could still leave a voicemail message there. That's not very surprising. I don't know how many people have his phone number, and if he's presumed to be dead, journalists don't go calling him. But I called his mother, I called his sister, neither of them answered. Some people who were on this guy, maybe they saw the Roger Stone tweet early and started looking into him. Here's somebody who found his Facebook page and screen captured a couple of pictures from there. They've removed his Facebook page already. I went just through some of these images that this person had, and here you can see it says they're removing this quickly. I tried looking at this guy's Facebook in archive.org, but it doesn't always archive that well. Facebook and how archive.org works is weird. It looks like maybe, yesterday when all this, or earlier today when all this activity was going on, maybe this is marking where they've deleted it. See, it says there are 5 captures, but there's only 3 there. You can't get to the other 2. Maybe those had some meat in them, but all of these are just blank. So clearly something weird is happening. Archive.org is not some magical thing. It's a web page. Somebody has the ability to delete whatever goes on there, and archive.org has been getting sued. I'm not quite sure by who. I guess the government, or maybe the Library of Congress, or I'm not sure who is suing them, but they started a thing where you could borrow digital books, and the people publishing the books were saying you cannot do that. It resulted in a big lawsuit. So see, that's another thing, because I think a lot of people for a long time felt like archive.org was some kind of bulletproof Superman website that could never be incorrect and can't be affected by some of these things that affect Twitter and YouTube and all that other stuff. But the fact of the matter is, they can get sued, they can be subjected to lawfare like anybody else, and as a component of the lawsuit, maybe they get put over a barrel so badly that somebody says to them, hey, instead of giving us millions or whatever dollars, you just come and work for us now, and when we tell you to delete a web page about Max Yearick, do it. And maybe they say, okay, got no choice, gonna do that. So the first thing that they like to do, and Ole Damagard used to talk about this, obscuring the face. They did this with Lee Harvey Oswald as well. There's a pretty advanced technique that they can use where they take two pictures of two different people with similar shaped faces and sort of cut it on a diagonal and put one half of the face with the other half of the face and merge it together in such a way that if you see either of those two people again, you might not quite recognize them, or you might confuse them. You know, it's an obfuscation tactic, as is releasing nonsense. Now, here is something I got off of Yandex, which is the Russian Google, and I don't think that the same people in the United States have the ability to scrub this. So I don't know what this news magazine is, but it tells us that this guy, he's 30, he's from Pennsylvania, and it's talking about him returning to the United States. This claims that he went to Ukraine to fight in the Ukrainian army. So I haven't been able to find any corroboration of that, but that would make sense if he's able to shoot a rifle very well. He's maybe had some training in Ukraine. It also says this guy, and I verified this, I looked this up and saw some records of his arrest history. He's had multiple trespass arrests. He had a conviction where he was in jail, actually, which is pretty interesting because I'm always intrigued by these guys who have been to jail and then show up so helpful to the government, or maybe not so helpful to the government. We still have lots of social engineers on me, and that's actually additional evidence that what I'm talking about is important. See, because there's a lot of people now who are back to searching for information on the internet. I think we are pretty well into an era where even if people think, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, they sort of have a general sense that, you know, corporate-controlled, advertiser-driven news has a particular way about it, and independent sources on the internet have another way of going about it. And what I have been able to observe since Saturday is a dramatic uptick in the level of attention being paid, at least to crowdsource the truth. I have to presume that's happening with other independent news sources as well, because the Twitter account has been growing. If people are not following on X, please go over there to @JG_CSTT. The Twitter account is growing. A lot of people are on there looking at the things that I'm talking about and sharing their own information. I mean, this is really, it's like a crowdsourcing cauldron on Twitter. And I think even people who aren't directly aware of the terminology, they know that this is happening. This is no longer this like, oh, really? I didn't know you could do that. People have a general sense that it's a different way of getting to information. And so there have been a lot of new people on Twitter, and with that comes some really excellent input, and also more either social engineers who are deliberately putting, yeah, see, I've had interference over here before. I forgot about that on this street. I hope we don't lose the broadcast. Let's see if I can do something to get it back and make it happy. Why is it doing this? Come on. Oh, man. I hate that when that happens. How do I get this back here? I've done it once before. It was very, very tricky. And maybe it's because it's too hot. Damn it. Let's see. How am I going to do this here? Okay, so this is terrible. People, bear with me for just a second. I have a lot of important things to still discuss with everybody. So I want to make sure we get to that. Bear with me, I have a super secret plan that should save this. Oh, wait a minute, we might not even need to do that plan. Let's just see. Is a new approach. Perhaps this will work. Yeah, there we go, we're back. Love it. Okay. So what I was trying to get to is, they like to obscure this information early on. Remember, John Cullen has told us about these different types of biases. Oh, come on now, this thing's not gonna work? There's so much gear here that likes to give me a hard time. So come on now. It's amazing. I can't have everything working for more than a day at a time. So he talks about normalcy bias, he talks about confirmation bias. There's that certain type of bias where the first thing you hear, I forget what they call it, but it's the first thing you hear, you start to form an opinion on that. And there's a lot of people who, I don't know if they're social engineers or just people who are, there's an anxiousness to finding the answer that a lot of people want to participate in, so they start speculating kind of wildly. Like, oh, maybe, something that we have absolutely no evidence for happened. And it's like, well, maybe, but why are we going there? I like to look at the evidence that we have and try to explain what it means. So we've got a news article there that remains accessible on a Russian search engine that says that this kid went to Ukraine. The other thing is there's stories coming out today that Matthew Crooks, he was kicked out of the rifle club. Now, that sounds very much like a Lee Harvey Oswald story. Do they have rifle clubs in high schools still in 2024 or 23 or whenever that guy would have gotten kicked out? Is this person trying to email feet pictures to somebody? Doing their little Instagram shoot on the sidewalk? I don't know why people want feet pictures. That's a strange thing, but these are standard tactics. Obscuring the guy's identity, injecting confusing information in the beginning so that they can get, whoever they want out of the debate. They can say, oh, you're spreading misinformation and disinformation. But the point of the matter is, this dude who is shot on the roof, the other thing people are looking at is that he's a certain type of earring that like stretches out your ear. I think it's called a plug. And they say that you can see the surgery on his earlobe where that big hole was stitched up. So there's a lot of really distinctive details on this dead roof guy's ear. And then, so the other thing that I have been coming up with that I found pretty interesting was this logo for the American Glass Research. So here is the logo next to a Freemasonry compass. And, look, I'm not like trying to come up with this. I never heard of this company before. I never saw their logo before this shooting occurred. And I never even thought about these guys even once before Saturday. So I saw that logo and I just said, I don't know, something about that is weird to me. It looks a little bit like a Freemason's compass. And then I noticed that when you turn the G around and face it in the same direction as the microscope depicted in the American Glass Research logo, it really starts to resemble it. And I mean, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing. There were a bunch of unknown, mostly fake named accounts that started complaining that I was showing this like, oh, come on, man. I know Masons, they're good people. It's like, okay, I'm not saying every single Freemason did this. I'm just pointing out that the logo seems to indicate that at least the logo designer had some sort of Freemasonry design in mind. It could be nothing. But also the other thing that's important for dumb people on the internet who say things that they know nothing about to keep in mind is that I'm not saying that this one image is the damning piece of evidence that locks up the whole case and proves that something did or did not happen. I'm just pointing out, we've got this building here that by all means, nobody at all should have been able to access the roof of. There's all kinds of strange questions about, why were just civilians in the audience able to see this guy on the roof, but this whole shooter team and Secret Service and whoever else was there, what are you doing? You got to take that bicycle off the sidewalk and abide by the law. Do not ride a bicycle on the sidewalk. Do you speak English? Do you speak English?
Okay, okay.
Fucking asshole. Keep it off the sidewalk. I'm sorry for people who don't like that. But this is the broken windows philosophy, right? If the police would actually stop the people who are breaking the law by riding the bicycle on the sidewalk? Maybe that guy's here illegally. Maybe somebody else who's doing it is here illegally. Maybe they're part of these Venezuelan gangs that have been rolling around stealing $100,000 watches and killing people. But because the police don't want to do anything about that, the crime will escalate. Anyway, the point is, these fake named accounts, who I don't know, and I mean, again, it doesn't seem super logical to me. I mean, when you're dealing with these individual responses, it's hard to tell. But it's one of these kind of frequency responses. There's a lot of input from fake named accounts, none of which are providing any countermanding evidence. Nobody can explain, some better explanation of what I'm trying to get at. And by the way, I'm not saying like, oh, the Masons did this. See, the reason why stupid people think that showing a similarity to a Masonic logo equates to some sort of conclusion is because it's a lot of the same logic that goes into, oh, 5 dancing Israeli guys got arrested on 9/11, so that must mean that Israel did the whole entire thing. It couldn't possibly mean that somebody else, like maybe a team led by American neocons, like Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and maybe even George Bush, people who could actually control things like the US Navy and the response at the Pentagon to shut down the anti-missile defense system at the Pentagon. I don't think Israel could do that. Maybe they could, but we don't have evidence that they could. And there's a lot of people who say 5 dancing Israeli guys who could have easily been hired by anyone, including FBI, CIA, whoever, with the specific intention that they get caught to inject false information so that people spend years arguing about what happened. And that is happening again now. So they start by injecting false information of a guy who didn't do it. Then they give you a different picture of a guy who didn't do it, and they have all this confusion erupt so that people can spend a lot of time arguing about nonsense that has nothing to do with whoever actually did it. Now, we're talking about Max Yearick. Either that guy was involved or he wasn't. If he wasn't, why are they scrubbing his Facebook stuff? Oh, because everybody is saying that he did it and they're doing it to protect his privacy. Really? Why didn't they do that when George Webb and his moron, mentally ill, wife-swapping, paperclip Nazi brother plotted a fake bomb hoax? I mean, we were in the New York Times. That was a big news story for a day. That was on CNN. Why didn't they scrub my social media or George's social media? Maybe they deleted his, but that wasn't because he violated terms of service. And I mean, has Facebook come out and said, we deleted this guy's Facebook page because shooting at the president is a violation of terms of service? I don't think they said that. I think they're doing it to protect the information and to prevent you from investigating what was going on. Because if this guy was arrested for trespass and got, I think it was like 3 to 12 months or something like that. So if you're sitting there in jail, Allegheny or wherever it said that he went, does some idiot like Andrew Weissman come to you and say, hey, you could either sit in jail here or you. Whoops, what happened now? How did that happen? Oh, it's back. You could either sit in jail and rot here, or you could come work for us. And like, hey, we want you to go be a sniper in Ukraine. Now you come back. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that somebody would go to Max Yearick and tell him, hey, you're gonna go up on the roof, shoot at Trump, and then we're gonna kill you. Because almost nobody would say, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But couldn't they tell him, hey, you're a trusted guy. We made that super secret deal very similar to the one that Felix Sater signed when he got jammed up for stabbing a guy in the face. You're here for repeated trespass, resisting arrest, could get in trouble. why don't you come do some of your antics for us, and you can work for us. You'll get to go to Ukraine. And by the way, he's one of these Antifa maniacs running around at these riots. If the FBI started talking to you about letting you out of jail, giving you a gun, sending you to Russia to kill, or to Ukraine to kill Russians, I mean, this is like a wet dream for one of these weirdos. You go there, or not. You're just getting on this program, and the point is, if you're a successful operative, wouldn't it be possible that they would say, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be allowed up onto this roof. You're going to go to this building. We control the building. No one is going to deter you. You get up on the roof. You're a great shot, Max. You're going to have the opportunity to do this thing that in your mind is a great thing, and you'll be a hero with your psychotic, sick people who want to see this happen. And he might say, great, I love that. That guy might love the opportunity to be the murderer. But the part they don't tell him about, and they might say, we're going to blame it on this other guy. You're going to be the James Files of this plan, the guy behind the picket fence. It's hard to sell somebody on the Lee Harvey Oswald role because they saw how that movie ends. But if you tell them you're going to get paid some huge sum, you're going to be protected by us from crimes, from prosecution, and you're going to be doing something that you either really think is the right thing to do or psychotic brain wants to do or whatever. And I just think they don't tell him the full plan. We're also hearing information now that someone is saying, well, John Cullen had a post that said there was a 9th shot. So again, there's still a ton of evidence that needs to come into this before we even fully understand exactly what happened. On last night's show, John did a great job of reminding all of us people who are not gun experts that when a gun fires, it's not just going bang. There's a lot of things that happen. Supersonic report of the projectile breaking the sound barrier, it hitting things, echoes, all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of different stuff that needs to go into analyzing exactly what happened there before we can draw any conclusions. But even just look at the hair color of the dead guy compared to Crooks versus Yearick. Yeah, here's the other thing. So a lot of people are talking, see, there's this woman, what is her name? See, there's somebody, I'm getting to the point where I can almost kind of like detect these lying fake people. And what's interesting is, there was somebody, I forget her name, but she, as soon as I started posting about American glass research, I noticed that this person was. And when I first started posting about it, I was looking like, you know, I searched for it and said, where are the latest posts? And they were all me. Because I was looking to interact with some tweets about this thing and try and get some traction on my tweets. And it wasn't, there was nobody talking about it. So then today, this morning, I forget this woman's name. I must have it here somewhere. But I noticed her, and
Hello. Nice to meet you too.
I asked her something. She was saying something about the research of the glass place, and she found who it was sold to. And I agree, that's relevant. It was just sold in March. I'm not saying don't look at that, but I'm saying, wait a minute, before we get to who it was sold to, I think it's interesting to observe how it began. Guy with the headphones doesn't seem to mind the danger that he's being put in, but I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's people who are like, oh, let him have fun. Absolutely. But do it in a skate park, not in a park where it's designated that skateboards are not allowed. And just like the Secret Service failed yesterday for not, maybe initially it's as simple as asking this guy, hey, you're parked in the wrong parking space. Then you interact with him and you realize he's a maniac with a rifle. Suddenly you can shut that down. So the police standing around texting and doing nothing is such a big deal, and so the opposite of what the police are intended to do. Every second that they are on duty, they're intended to be maintaining situational awareness so that they're not reacting 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 2 minutes. after something critical happens. The idea is that we hope that they will prevent something from happening. So this woman, she's saying about how the thing got sold in March, which I agree, that's very suspicious, and it was sold to Ingersoll Rand or something like that. But I'm even more interested in the guy who created the company. Like, that logo is looking like a pretty not so modern logo to me, and it's this guy, Dr. Frank Preston, who is the founder of the company. Preston's an exceptionally interesting guy. He's a British optical engineer who was in World War I. And there's this whole story, it refers to some terms that are either military terms or British military terms that I wasn't exactly familiar with, but it sounds like he was kind of like deferred from getting drafted into the normal army for World War I because everybody realized this guy was super smart, and he wrote a whole letter to like his, his teachers or his professors or whoever it was that was saying he shouldn't go into the army, and he was basically telling them, no, I want to go into the army because I want to help the war effort, and I think they sort of wouldn't let him. And so a bunch of his friends got killed in World War I, and he was upset about that. And then he gets involved in all of his sort of specialized glass. It seems that he invented a method, or he worked with a guy who invented a method and a machine for polishing glass. And what's important about that is it affects the resolution of the optics. It's not just about making something like polishing your car or your silver. These guys are making like lenses for satellites and things like that. And so, they need to reduce the amount of boron or whatever so that it's, who knows. And then we were also talking with Charles yesterday. He worked with Corning to produce this type of glassware that Charles knew about and was very impressed that this guy was involved in. But I mean, again, I think that's like 100 years from now, if someone's like, ooh, Elon Musk owned Twitter and made, electric cars. But then you don't talk about the fact that he has a contract with the Department of Defense to give them a satellite network and to launch rockets, and what are the details surrounding all of that? We don't really know. And this guy, Preston, he also created Preston Labs, which I have barely even looked into. So before he created this American glass research company, he created Preston Labs. And somebody has suggested that his work with Kodak, Preston, when he first came to the United States in his youth, in the 20s and 30s or whatever, he was working with Kodak to develop lenses. And then one of the most stunning things that they admit to is that this guy was invited to what I've been calling the nuclear boom boom room. He was a civilian observer at nuclear tests, which, I mean, didn't that have to be the most top secret thing happening anywhere? What is this guy doing there? I have a feeling he's involved in a lot of highly specialized stuff that they are not telling you about, kind of like how they've deleted public information about this guy, Max Yearick. Sometimes the government doesn't like people to know what they're doing. And they'll tell you it's because it's national security and it's for your best interest. But you see, if we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and we are the people, how do these other people know what's our best interest? In fact, I think they're doing things that are in the opposite of our best interests. And in fact, that is what social engineering is. When someone convinces you that you want to do something that is against your interest, like perhaps doing a broadcast about a bomb hoax, or perhaps, I don't know, thinking that Joe Biden is the president and that the election was legitimate. These are all things that psychological techniques and tactics can be used to convince you of, but they are not in your best interest. And it's super difficult to unconvince someone that they've been fooled. Like, for instance, I've recently come to believe that the same entity that created Nazism also created Zionism. And I realize that's a shocking thing for many people to hear, but when you think about that in the context of a person like George Soros or Vladimir Zelensky, Jewish guys who appear to be pretty pro-Nazi and even working with and for them, that's odd. You also have to think about that guy, was it Albert or Alfred Rosenberg, the Reich minister under Hitler? A Hungarian journalist in the 1930s said he was Jewish and didn't have a drop of German blood in him. And there's a lot of other evidence that suggests that that's true. So what are the implications of that if that's correct? Another stunning piece of social engineering. Do people know that the Statue of Liberty is not actually called the Statue of Liberty? It's called Liberty Enlightening the World. And that's what the torch is enlightenment. And the statue is wearing a 7-point crown, just like Lucifer. And the statue is also chained by its foot to the ground, which also has something to do with Lucifer. The point is, I've read documentation which says that the statue is Lucifer. And we have all been tricked into thinking it's some kind of, wonderful thing. But that was also created by Freemasons, the Statue of Liberty, and sent to the United States from France. I've spoken about this recently because I've only recently learned about it. But when the Nazis took over France, after they imprisoned and killed all the Jews, the second thing they went after was the Freemasons. They plundered the lodges, took all their books and artifacts and everything. And remember, Heinrich Himmler, his stated purpose was he wanted to find these ancient artifacts because he believed like the Thor of Hammer was an ancient weapon. And remember in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, they depict the Nazis pursuing the Lost Ark of the Covenant. And I think they even say in that movie that an army led by the Ark would have the power of God or something and can't be defeated and blah, blah, blah. But it's just, I'm not saying that these were sensible or scientific pursuits. It's just, it's documented that that's what they were doing. And so, they believed it. But I mean, I don't know, maybe the Nazis knew something that we don't know. I saw a video recently that said after the Allies defeated the Nazis, allegedly, the spoils were divided up between the United States and the United Kingdom and, the Allies and USSR. And that with regard to these Masonic artifacts, the United States and Britain had returned them to the Masonic lodges in France, like sometime shortly after. They just sort of like cataloged them and whatever and gave it back. But Russia did not return a substantial amount of these items. Apparently Khrushchev said like, we only have 4 documents, and gave them 4 documents in the 1940s, but have in 2010, I think, or 2013, something like that, a whole trove of these Masonic documents captured by the Nazis and later by the USSR. A whole trove of documents was returned back to the French Masonic lodges in like 2010 or 2013. So there's all this relatively new information and new understanding coming out of all that. So I mean, again, I'm not on some kind of like mission against Masons. I see these symbols and I find them curious, and I think there's a lot of stuff about it that's unknown. So, a bunch of people who don't understand what I'm talking about, don't know what they themselves are talking about, will say that kind of crap, like, I know Masons, this is BS or whatever. Well, what's BS? That's their logo. I mean, you can disagree with me and say you don't think that it looks like the Freemasonry compass. I suppose that's your opinion to have. It seems pretty inarguable to me that it's at least similar. The shape of the G, the shape of the microscope, the shape of the A, the shape of the compass, it's similar. If you were a Mason and you saw that symbol, it might appeal to you and might cause you to think, okay, this place is controlled by Masons. But the other thing that's really weird is our buddy Preston, Dr. Preston, who created the place, he went to this British school. I think I have it here. Yeah. This is weird to me. He went to this thing called, what's it called? I got my logo over it here. It reminds me of Harry Potter. This thing is called Wigston Boys School. I believe it doesn't exist anymore, but this was a super duper elite preparatory school for boys, which, I don't know, British people seem to like buggering people at these type of things. I don't know, I've heard that. I've never been to British whatever school. Could you maybe ride that in the street where you're not endangering public safety? Like, get off of it and ride it in the street, please? Fucking asshole. So he goes to this school, which is this elite preparatory school that is intended to get people to go to Oxford, which we know is a stepping stone to the intelligence community. But this guy did not go to Oxford. So that's the thing. See, there are some people who get into the intelligence community. Like, I've told this story before about a late friend of mine. He was much older than me. He was a scientist. He was an optical, I don't know exactly what he was, to tell you the truth, but he was one of these guys who didn't have like a long list of degrees, but yet he was like the smartest guy you ever met about almost anything, and particularly to do with light and optics and physics and human vision. And this guy was a mentor of mine in the world of 3D, and I knew him for about 20 years. What's that? Something really weird going on with my sound. I think maybe I'm sweating on the microphone and I've ruined it. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Well, there's probably nothing I can do about that except buy a new microphone. That's terrible. I think I got the paper cone and the microphone wet. Wow. Anyway, this guy Preston, he was like a member of the Physics Society, even though he wasn't a PhD in physics. You know, he's one of these amazing guys. And it just feels like this is a deep state company. Boy, the sound is so bad, I think I'm going to end the broadcast. It's amazing the number of things that go wrong, but it is incredibly hot today and I am sweating a lot. So it seems to me this guy Crooks is not the shooter, or at least he's not the dead guy on the roof. The hair color matches perfectly. Where's our image there? Yeah, I mean, you look at, well, this one's darkened out. Well, we'll spend some more time looking at more images of this guy, but for now, I'm gonna have to go buy a new microphone. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to become a sponsor. This is what I wanted to tell you. When you're watching a video on YouTube and ads come on and interrupt the video, I hope that doesn't happen on my videos, because YouTube always tells me my videos were not suitable for advertising and they would not put ads on there, but I don't make any money from YouTube ad monetization. So I want to remind people that somebody who is making money from it, I wouldn't even be on YouTube, I think, if this video is in danger of getting kicked off of YouTube. If they decide that this guy is not the shooter and anybody who puts out a video saying he's a shooter gets deleted from YouTube, that wouldn't be the craziest thing we've ever seen them do. But if that happens, people will still be able to watch Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And remember, if you are watching a program that is free and supported by ads or corporate sponsors, whether it's YouTube or The Pillow or whoever it was, that person speaking in the video is going to be beholden to whoever is paying for those ads, which is why I encourage individual viewers of Crowdsource the Truth to become sponsors, because you sponsors are the people that I am trying to deliver information that will be beneficial to. I'm not being paid by somebody else to tell you some kind of nonsense. And also remember, that's what Julie was trying to convince people of. Don't subscribe to Jason's show. He's lying, but she won't tell you what I'm lying about. You need to look at her blog to understand what's going on with Felix Sater. This is the same thing that the news is doing. They're saying, no, don't look at this guy's Facebook page. Don't look at what Jason is talking about. You have to watch CNN. You have to watch MSNBC and read the New York Times. I mean, this is what Julie is doing. And she won't give up. This is the last piece of evidence that I wanted to talk about. There was so much activity from the Julie section, the cheap seats. Yeah, it feels to me like George's brother. I know he's communicated with her. I see it happening on Twitter. So she's, conspiring with a guy who's been breaking the law and harassing me and members of my family for the last 7 years. So that's incredibly stupid. And I've warned her about it many, many times. I'm going to sue her. So she can sit in her stupid house or the beer store thinking that I can't do that or that I'm not going to prevail in a lawsuit, but she doesn't know. Oh man, is this Container Store out of business? No, there's the Container Store. But see, it just makes no sense. Someone who's going to spend all their time, and she said it's been thousands of hours, creating a Felix Sater blog to not make any money from it so that she can go to the beer store and earn money, and then disparage me for telling people, hey, I spend all my time researching this stuff and making videos. So if people think this information is interesting and these videos are enjoyable, please sponsor the show, because that's going to allow me to continue creating videos like this. And I try to make them educational and enjoyable. And only people who have no concept of reality or want to discourage people from supporting this show would think that everybody could just make videos for free and that they should do that. Anyway, that's all I have to say really about this guy Max Yearick for now. We're going to find out more about him. I'm sure we're going to hear more about American Glass research. It was also interesting to note that the New York Post, even though they were talking about this guy and the building, they said he was on the roof of a building of a manufacturing company, but they didn't want to mention the company. They never mentioned the company. Even if you just said he was on the roof of American Glass Research, you're not accusing them of anything. We saw there was an interview with a guy who now somebody claims was the CEO. I don't know if that's correct, but there was a guy who knew what it was. He said there was law enforcement in the building. So how do you have law enforcement in the building if there's not a relationship between whoever controls that building and the law enforcement people, even if the relationship is just to call them up and say, hey, we need to put some people in your building on Saturday? How would you have nobody at all there? Wouldn't you have the manager or a couple of employees who have to come in on Saturday to assist the local law enforcement? How did this guy get up on the roof? You've got a manufacturing plant. Don't you have security? Don't you have cameras and some, even when you're closed, you're telling me a big compound like that with lots of employees and manufacturing and they don't have a security company that's driving around their parking lot on the weekend? I just find that difficult to believe. There's so much weird stuff about this. And when I say, hey, what's up with this guy whose mother and sister aren't answering the phone, whose social media has been totally scrubbed, whose hair and face look exactly like the guy in the picture of the dead guy, whose incredibly distinctively shaped ear does not match any pictures of any of the other guys we've seen. No pictures of the living Max Yearick show his ear. It's all very strange. It's very strange. So anyway, YouTube will not monetize these videos. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences has spent over $1 million trying to sue me to make this channel stop. And by the way, to bookend this video, what was I doing down there at the courthouse? Oh yeah, I was submitting the printed copies of my appellant reply to the appellee response to my appeal of the denial of a 60B4 motion in which I have accused Valerie Caproni of unprecedented judicial corruption. And we are now in an environment where a federal judge just pointed out that Jack Smith was illegally appointed and dismantled his case as a result. These federal judges have huge authority within the context of their own cases, and if the Second Circuit wants to, they could remand this case to the district court with the instructions that it be assigned to an unbiased judge who will preside over it in accordance with due process. And if that happens, then Adam Sharp and his asshole friends at the Emmys will be back in court with the real party and interest defendant, me. I don't know if that will happen, but it's also interesting to observe that Julie and her friends, Tom Griffin and the like, they're like, oh, Jason's a terrible lawyer. He hasn't won anything in court. It's like, I mean, again, I come to my analogy of, it's like I go to play basketball against the Knicks right now. 52-year-old 5'8" Jason go play the whole team and lose. And they're like, oh, haha, Jason lost at basketball. But what they're not telling you is Jason managed to get, 6 points or something like that, which would be a huge feat. I'm up against teams of law firms, lawyers who have 90 years of experience between them and stuff like that, just on one given law firm team. So I've never told anybody I'm a lawyer, and in fact, I frequently tell people I am not a lawyer. It's called a disclaimer, because you might be watching this video and seeing me speak for the first time ever, and I want to make sure that nobody thinks that I'm pretending to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not qualified to give people any kind of legal advice, and anything I ever say about the law, about lawfare, counter lawfare, going to court, it's all just anecdotal, personal experiences that I'm sharing with people as somebody who has been put through the lawfare grinder. We see the end game with Trump. The lawfare has collapsed, so now they're trying to kill him. And just like Alex Jones has predicted, I don't think they're going to stop because the first attempt failed. So Trump needs to be extremely careful. Has he announced a vice president yet? Let's see, the comments will know. Do we have a Trump VP? John Taylor would like to subscribe. Thank you, John. It's easily done. I recommend odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. For as little as $3 a month, you're going to get access to sponsor-exclusive content. You help keep this show going. And if you, like so many people who have rushed to the internet when they could tell that the corporate advertiser-sponsored news was lying to them, then you should sponsor the show. Look, even what's going on with Elon Musk, I was going to do a show on Saturday, but I got delayed, and then when everything was happening with Trump, I decided it wasn't good timing. But there's something called GARM, G-A-R-M, and I forget what it stands for, but it's basically this coalition of corporations and then non-profit organizations, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and governments around the world that have formed this like non-profit coalition where they're basically going to every single social media platform and we're saying, hey, we don't care if a billionaire owns your thing and says he wants freedom of speech, because we're just not going to advertise on your platform if you don't adhere to this like European style lack of free speech. Maybe the microphone is drying off. That's a good sign. But basically they're blackmailing people with advertising. So that's another reason why, if you want, forget about Crowdsource the Truth. If you just want the concept of news, information, opinion, this type of content to thrive and exist, in a censorship-free environment, it's super important that you support this work while it still exists. Thank you to everybody who sponsors the show. I've said it a million times, I'd be gone a long time ago if it wasn't for the individual sponsors, and I certainly think that George and his asshole mentally ill brother would have stood down by now if I were ineffective or talking about things that were a waste of time. But instead, we're working on year 8 of those maniacs trying to destroy Crowdsource the truth. So thanks to everybody who's helped me keep it alive. We're going to keep our eyes on these, just fake stories coming out about, it's like a bad sequel to the JFK assassination. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.